governor of the most populous state said he's sending every registered voter a ballot. And we haven't even gotten to the ballot harvesting issue yet. I'm speaking to an expert on voter fraud, Eric Eggers. And Mr. Eggers is the author of Fraud, How the Left Plans to Steal the Next Election. I have not talked about this much in my radio career because I generally have believed that elections were fair. It is not the case anymore. In any event, you all know one of the truisms of the last 100 years: everything the left touches, it ruins. The next victim will be elections. So, where did you get the figure of 1 in 8 people getting these ballots? Is there something corrupted about it? I don't mean morally corrupted, just legally corrupted. What does that mean?
You know, Dennis, one of my favorite things about doing your radio show is you always fact check me, and you're always asking for the bibliography. So that stat came from the Pew Center study, and it was actually cited in a Supreme Court decision in which they upheld the state of Ohio's decision and ability to make sure that their voter rolls were accurate. Because what happens is people, you register to vote, but then people move or they die. The city of Detroit, a lawsuit last year pointed out, had more than 2,500 dead people on its rolls. So you've got voter rolls. You've seen these stats where some counties, and there's like 350 counties in the country that have more registered voters than citizens of legal voting age. So you've got voter roll bloat as a problem. And so the state of Ohio said, hey, we want to be proactive about this. We want to start making sure that people are actually still registered to vote. They should be voting. And so, of course, that was challenged by many left-funded groups. The Supreme Court upheld its ability to do so, and in that ruling, they cited that statistic from the Pew Center.
You mentioned that it may not matter as much in California because no matter what, there will be an overwhelming vote for any Democrat who's running for president, which is true. But then there are House districts, though, that can go one way or the other, and there I do fear that they will steal an election in California in the House.
It's a great point, and I think that's a common misconception by these voter fraud deniers is that, sure, maybe it's possible. In fact, we know it's possible for illegal votes to be cast. I mean, even in Los Angeles last year, or in 2018, rather, there was a voter fraud ring busted in Skid Row, and police officers were involved. So, I mean, we know illegal voting activities happen all over the state and, unfortunately, all over the country. But people always say, well, but it's such a small percentage of the actual votes cast. But I think you're absolutely right to point out that, especially in congressional seats or even local seats, the margin of victory in many of these races can be quite small. And actually, one of the things that we pointed out in the video that I was honored to do for PragerU was a congressional seat in the Southern California area that actually, because of ballot harvesting, because of the third-party solicitation and collection of ballots, the Republican was leading on election night by thousands of votes. But then after all these harvested ballots came in, the Democrat took a lead. But you're still talking about low four figures in terms of margins, and when you consider the volume of people on the voter rolls that probably shouldn't be there, whether they're illegal immigrants, whether they're just erroneous registrations that these funded political opportunists can take advantage of, then you're right. It's absolutely possible for congressional races and even the presidency to swing. Again, we're talking about fewer than
right in the Midwest, right. So please explain in a nutshell what ballot harvesting is for my listeners.
Okay, so this is something that the state of California became the first state to legalize, and it's essentially people can go door to door and ask you to give them your ballot, and if you're willing to do so, then they say, okay, I will now promise to take this ballot to the polling place on your behalf. There are many states in which this has already been done just operationally as a political reality. People target senior citizens in the state of Florida in a practice known as granny farming. In Texas, they have these political operatives known as politicaros. So, I mean, this is a practice that's happening, but California became the first state to say, no, we're going to make this practice legal. And many political observers blame this practice for the fact that 7 Republican congressional districts in the Southern California area became Democrat in 2018.
Because what exactly happens? The guy comes or the woman comes to your door. Let me take your ballot for you, Grandma. But so how does that affect the vote?
Well, so there's nothing that says these people that come and take Grandma's ballot have to take Grandma's ballot if she's a Republican, or they have to deliver it if she's a Republican. In fact, there's been doorknob cameras that have captured people specifically requesting the votes of Democrat voters. So essentially, think of it this way, Dennis. Would you give your wallet to have somebody take it to the bank for you? I don't think so. So to me, the idea of voting, me being in charge of my vote, is sacrosanct. I think it's crucial to American history. But in the name of access and in reaching the disenfranchised, we've now legalized in the states.
So you're saying that some of these harvesters would throw away what they thought was a Republican ballot?
I'm saying, how do you know once you stop being in charge of your ballot?
Also, I heard that there is the danger of, I didn't fill it out yet. Oh, so let me help you.
Oh, absolutely. And, unfortunately, there's comical versions of stories. I have a story in the book about a blind man that had a political operative help him fill out his ballot on his behalf. So, yeah, the point is, once you start having paid political operatives interfere with the ballot booth process, then I think nothing but bad things can occur.
Yes, all right, stay with me. Eric Eggers, and his book is up at DennisPrager.com. It will be up. It should be up. I have no faith that the United States of America will have a fair counting of ballots because of what is being done with regard to sending every voter, including dead ones, ballots in the mail. I have Eric Eggers on. His official title is...
My official title is...
Go ahead.
I'm sorry, Dennis. I'm a research director with the Government Accountability Institute.
Yeah, I have fellow.
Well,
so which is it? Which is it, sir?
Right. Who has time to quibble over such, kind of meaningless, pedantic things if our democracy is, on its last leg?
You know why? Because the only way I stay sane is with dark humor. That is the reason, my dear friend. Eric Eggers, by the way, presents a PragerU video on the whole issue of voter fraud. I'm telling you, forgive me for one moment. I just want to say to my listeners, the pain that I have seeing almost every institution nationally and internationally wrecked, the media, the universities, the medical profession, the voting now, I don't want any of you to lose your balance, but because the only way out of this is to realize that there is an infection. Now, I want your assessment of Gavin Newsom in the most populous state in the union, saying all ballots, and tell me if I'm right, if that's what he has said, all ballots for this coming presidential election will be by mail. Is that what he has said?
Yeah, he said he's going to mail everyone that's registered to vote, whether they're a legal voter or not. And that's an entirely separate category. But he's going to mail everyone a ballot. And so, that means that everyone, in the name of safety, will have the opportunity to cast the mail-in ballot. Now, he did in special elections that were held last month for a congressional race in Los Angeles. They opened up new polling places where you could still vote in person and even drop off the ballots. So I think it remains to be seen whether or not people will have the opportunity to cast in-person ballots. I would bet that they will, only because, quite honestly, that people still want to be able to have somewhere to take a ballot, and many people don't trust, as you pointed out, the veracity and validity of mail-in balloting. But in the name of access, Governor Gavin Newsom is mailing everyone that's registered to vote in California a ballot. Yet somehow, in the name of health, they have not banned, which I think is like the largest threat to American democracy that I've ever come across, this practice of ballot harvesting. So I love the idea of protecting America's health. I think I'm worried about the threat to our democracy's health that practices like what Gavin Newsom's doing in California will pose.
And what exactly constitutes the threat?
Yeah, it's a great question. So many people in many states, and I don't know how you prefer to vote, Dennis, but I have many friends that prefer to vote by mail. That's an option they currently have. So you can choose to request an absentee ballot from your supervisor of elections and then cast it in and no problem. The difference between what they're wanting to do in California and, oh, by the way, what the House Democrats have attempted to do repeatedly to make national law in every single one of their coronavirus response bills is to proactively mail everyone a ballot. And here's why that's a problem. Because when you mail everyone a ballot, that means that everyone that's registered to vote will be receiving a ballot. And as the Supreme Court has pointed out, 1 in 8 of America's voting registrations are significantly flawed or completely inaccurate. That's 24 million inaccurate names, people, potentially people, on these voter rolls that would receive a ballot. So in California, maybe it won't make that much of a difference. I don't think there's much of a threat of that state swinging the presidential election this cycle. But in a state like Michigan...
That's right. Hold on. This is vital for my listeners and me to know. Eric Eggers is my guest, and he also has a PragerU video. Do you have a book out? What's the book? I want to tell everybody about it. Yes. No, excuse me. Is voter fraud real? That's the video, and the author is Fraud: How the Left Plans to Steal the Next Election. Wow, I'm going to read that tomorrow. I'm Dennis Prager, Eric Eggers, Government Accountability Institute. One final question for you, because of time factors. The president tweeted that these mail-in ballots are potentially a road to fraud, voter fraud, and then Twitter marked it as false news. Any thoughts?
There's no doubt that of the forms of voting, that the absentee ballot fraud or mail-in balloting is absolutely susceptible to fraud and bad actors. We've had numerous examples of it in Florida, where I live. The New York Times has cited experts saying as much. So I think where the president gets in trouble at times is when he says that there's, it's fraud. I mean, what we're saying is it's clearly making it more susceptible to fraud. There's no doubt that that's accurate.
So he just missed the word susceptible.
People that are better and more highly paid than me can be in charge of the president's words, but absolutely, there's no doubt that by mailing everyone a ballot...
Yes, no, of course there's no doubt, exactly. Anyway, Twitter's not Twitter's business to label what anybody says misinformation. That's a very dangerous trend, but it's another subject. All right, I want to remind everybody that his book is out. It is titled Fraud: How the Left Plans to Steal the Next Election. It is a very scary process we're in. Thank you, Eric Eggers.
Thank you so much.
You're very welcome. And he has a video on this at PragerU.